Hi, automotive enthusiasts. Welcome to Boost Bureau, where we explore machines, culture, and the stories that move us. Today, we're diving into a car that redefined what it meant to be both futuristic and deeply unconventional, the Citroën.
CX Prestige from the late 1970s into the mid-1980s, this French luxury sedan was unlike anything else on the road.
With technology that looked like it had been borrowed from a science fiction novel, and a design that dared to break every convention of what a flagship executive car was supposed to be. On this channel, we like to go beyond the familiar names and badges and instead unravel the machines that quietly shaped automotive history or that today stand as rare treasures just waiting to be rediscovered. And the CX Prestige is one of those cars that reveals more the deeper you look. At first glance, it seems like a long, low limousine stretched for diplomats and CEOs, but when you peel back the layers, you find engineering that bent physics to its will, and a cultural story about a brand that refused to play by anyone else's rules. What makes the Prestige fascinating for a US audience is the fact that it was never officially sold here, which only added to its mystique. But now, thanks to the 25-year import window, enthusiasts can finally bring these cars stateside without loopholes or compromises. That makes today the perfect moment to tell the full story. Because we're standing at the crossroads of history, technology, and opportunity. Throughout this journey, we'll unpack how Citroën envisioned the CX as a rolling showcase of French design bravado and technological obsession, why the Prestige variant elevated that vision into something closer to a European rival to the best from Germany, Britain, and America, and how time has transformed its once polarizing character into a badge of distinction for collectors and drivers who want something genuinely different. We'll move through the origins of the CX and the wild post-DS era that gave it life. We'll trace the way the Prestige became a status symbol and sometimes even a political prop. And we'll see how it aged into an import dream that tempts enthusiasts across the Atlantic today. This won't just be about suspension spheres and wheelbases. It's about a cultural phenomenon that challenged the very definition of comfort and identity on four wheels. So settle in, because over the next half hour, we're going to explore the rise, the struggles, and the enduring aura of the Citroën. CX Prestige, and by the time we're done, you'll understand why this French limousine continues to haunt the imagination of automotive insiders everywhere. The Citroën CX Prestige begins its story in the turbulent mid-1970s, a period when the French automaker was still basking in the afterglow of the DS, but facing a radically shifting automotive landscape. The oil crisis had shaken the industry. Luxury car buyers were becoming more cautious, and yet Citroën doubled down on its philosophy of engineering first, convention second. The CX emerged in 1974 as the heir to the DS throne, and within 2 years, the Prestige variant stretched that vision even further, targeting heads of state, CEOs, and anyone who wanted to travel in supreme comfort without bowing to the norms of German sedans or American V8 cruisers. It was a car that reflected both confidence and defiance. Microstory. Imagine Paris in the late 1970s, the boulevards filled with Peugeots, Renaults, and compact hatchbacks designed to sip fuel in uncertain times. Then suddenly, a CX Prestige glides by, long and impossibly low, with a roofline, stretched like a limousine and rear doors reshaped to offer space that rivaled a private lounge. Onlookers didn't always know what it was, but they knew it was different. For the French elite, that was the whole point. The Prestige was not about blending in, it was about declaring allegiance to innovation and comfort in a uniquely Gallic way. Context Digest. The Prestige wasn't just a standard CX with a bit more legroom. Citroën worked with coach builder Houllier to extend the wheelbase, reconfigure the rear seating, and refine the ride so that even at city speeds, passengers floated in near silence, paired with the high-drop pneumatic suspension system that defined Citroën's identity. The car could level itself automatically regardless of load, offering a sense of composure that rival brands simply could not replicate. Microstory. In the corridors of French power, the CX Prestige became more than transportation. It became a stage. For politicians and presidents, riding in one was a visual statement of French ingenuity, a refusal to import German luxury, and a message that the state trusted its own engineers to carry it forward. The imagery of leaders, Emerging from a CX Prestige reinforced its status as a national icon, though it also carried the burden of being tied to political shifts and economic storms. Context digest. Compared with its rivals, the Prestige was unconventional. While Mercedes-Benz leaned on straight-six and V8 engines, and Cadillac continued with massive V8s, Citroën kept faith with smaller displacement four-cylinder, and later diesel options. Yet thanks to its aerodynamic body and suspension wizardry, the ride quality outshone most competitors. This was not a car built for dragstrip numbers. It was a car built to glide, and for many, that mattered more than raw horsepower. Reflection bridge. The brilliance of the Prestige was that it made compromise look like confidence, turning technical limitations into design philosophy. Micro story. For everyday Parisians, the Prestige was rarely seen up close, but its image filtered through magazines and newsreels. It was aspirational, not because of price alone, but because it represented access to an experience that felt almost otherworldly. Stories spread of diplomats arriving fresh and unruffled. After hours of travel, while their counterparts in stiffer cars looked worn down, the Prestige became a myth machine as much as a transport machine. Context digest. Within Citroën, however, the financial picture was not so dreamy. The 1970s were hard years for the company, leading to its eventual absorption by Peugeot in 1976, just as the CX was finding its footing. This merger meant the Prestige existed in a delicate balance, representing the pinnacle of Citroën's individuality while being scrutinized under new corporate oversight. It was a car both celebrated and questioned internally. Microstory. In Southern Europe, wealthy entrepreneurs and artists gravitated to the Prestige because it stood apart from the gray suits of German sedans. Photographers loved the long rear windows, musicians loved the sense of space, and writers saw in it the embodiment of French eccentricity. Owning one was not just about mobility, it was about aligning with a lifestyle that prioritized creativity and independence over conformity. Reflection bridge. Yet as the years wore on, this very uniqueness that drew admirers also limited its broader appeal, setting the stage for tensions that would define its legacy. Microstory. On French highways, the Prestige was at home. Its aerodynamic body sliced through the air more efficiently than most contemporaries, allowing high-speed cruising that belied its modest power plants. Drivers often spoke of the uncanny stability, the sensation that the car anticipated bumps and dips before they arrived. The marriage of design and suspension created a confidence that set the CX apart, even if the engines lacked the drama of larger rivals. Context digest. By the early 1980s, the Prestige had settled into its role as a symbol of continuity in French executive transport, but cracks were appearing. Buyers outside France were hesitant, repair networks were limited, and the cost of maintaining the hydropneumatic system made some cautious. Yet to those who experienced it, these concerns melted away under the spell of the ride itself. Microstory. In Britain and Scandinavia, a small but devoted fan base grew around the Prestige. Importers brought them in for eccentric clients who wanted a limousine that didn't feel like every other chauffeur car. These owners accepted the quirks, embraced the complexity, and became evangelists for a kind of motoring that was slowly disappearing as regulations and mass production pressed brands into conformity. As this chapter of the Prestige's journey matured, the car had established itself as both an elite statement and an engineering curiosity. But looming economic and cultural shifts would soon test whether its magic could endure into a new era, and that sets the stage for the next part of its story. As the 1980s unfolded, the Citroën CX Prestige found itself in a world that was changing faster than its creators could have imagined. The oil crises had cooled, but their aftershocks lingered. Executive car buyers were leaning heavily toward German reliability and Japanese pragmatism, and luxury itself was being redefined, not as eccentric comfort, but as a fusion of status and technological bravado. The Prestige had to navigate this landscape, and in doing so, it revealed both the resilience and the fragility of Citroën's vision. Microstory. In West Germany, Mercedes S-Class sedans lined corporate parking lots, while BMW 7 Series models emerged as sporting alternatives. The CX Prestige was occasionally spotted among them, but its soft lines and high-drop pneumatic suspension felt almost surreal compared to the Teutonic stiffness. Some executives admired it as a daring outsider, while others dismissed it as too fragile for serious business. In that tension lay the car's paradox: admired for its comfort, questioned for its durability. Context Digest. Citroën responded with subtle updates. More refined interiors, expanded trim options, and in time, the availability of diesel power plants that promised efficiency during uncertain economic times. While these changes kept the Prestige relevant, they also highlighted Citroën's struggle to compete with the raw horsepower and global dealer networks of its rivals. What the Prestige offered was an experience, not a specification sheet victory. Micro-story. Across the English Channel, British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher was often photographed in Rover and Jaguar saloons, symbols of national industry. Yet visiting dignitaries from France might step out of a CX Prestige, drawing comparisons between two very different approaches to official transport. Where Britain projected heritage and tradition, the French projection was futurism and technical daring. Both were political statements dressed as cars. Reflection bridge. In this way, the Prestige became a cultural ambassador, for better and worse, embodying the uniqueness of France itself on the international stage. Micro-story. Private owners across continental Europe learned to live with the quirks: the hiss of hydraulic fluid when the car adjusted its ride, the peculiar steering feel that demanded adaptation, the electrical systems that required patience. These stories built a mythology of ownership, where devotion and frustration were two sides of the same coin. The people who stayed loyal saw themselves as part of an in-group, protectors of a rare philosophy in an era of conformity. Context Digest. During this same decade, the automotive press increasingly judged cars by performance benchmarks and reliability scores, categories where the CX Prestige often ranked unfavorably, yet ride comfort remained unmatched. Road. Testers grudgingly admitted that no car absorbed bumps and undulations with such grace, but many questioned whether this outweighed the headaches of upkeep. This tension gave the Prestige a reputation as both sublime and impractical. Micro-story. In southern France, stories circulated of chauffeurs who could drive clients for hours across uneven rural roads without spilling a glass of wine in the rear seat. It became an oft-repeated legend, a metaphor for the car's surreal smoothness. Those tales spread into motoring folklore, giving the Prestige a reputation that transcended mere numbers or reliability charts. Reflection bridge. Myths like these helped keep the Prestige alive in collective memory, even as practical buyers turned elsewhere. Micro-story. By the late 1980s, used examples began trickling into export markets unofficially. American enthusiasts occasionally encountered them at European car shows or through military service tours. And the impression they left was lasting. For someone used to Cadillacs and Lincolns, the Prestige felt alien in the best way. Lower, sleeker, floating rather than gliding, exotic without being ostentatious. It whispered rather than shouted. Context Digest. Meanwhile, Citroën's corporate overseers within the PSA group were cautious about pushing the Prestige abroad. Financial realities limited expansion, and regulations in the US and other major markets made homologation expensive. The Prestige remained a car seen more in magazines than on freeways outside Europe, reinforcing its aura as forbidden fruit for American enthusiasts. Micro-story. Artists, architects, and musicians began adopting the Prestige as a signature choice. The car became shorthand for individuality, a statement that the owner valued creativity over convention. Parked outside galleries or theaters, it looked more like a sculpture than a sedan, reinforcing the bond between design culture and automotive expression. Context Digest. Yet with every passing year, the Prestige aged, technology marched forward, emissions and safety rules tightened, and the once futuristic dashboard began to look dated. By the dawn of the 1990s, the car was already being treated as a classic in some circles. Even though production continued into that era, it had slipped from cutting edge to cult object in barely a decade. Micro-story. In diplomatic motorcades, the Prestige began yielding space to armored German sedans. Its role as a symbol of national pride shrank, but its role as an artifact of an earlier vision grew. Photographs from that era show its low silhouette surrounded by taller, bulkier machines, making it look even more like a relic of a daring experiment. Those images cemented its reputation as a car out of time, beloved by those who refused to let go of a more imaginative age. As the Prestige moved into the twilight of its production and reputation, it set the stage for a new chapter. No longer just a contemporary flagship, it was about to become a rare classic, waiting for rediscovery in a world that had largely moved on. By the time the 1990s arrived, the Citroën CX Prestige was already being spoken of in the past tense by many mainstream buyers. But for a growing underground of enthusiasts, it was just entering its most fascinating chapter. This was the era when the car began to transform from futuristic flagship into collectible curiosity and eventually into a cult classic with international appeal, especially across the Atlantic where the 25-year import rule slowly opened the door. Micro story. In small European towns, Prestiges sat quietly in garages, often as third or fourth cars kept by aging professionals who couldn't quite bear to part with them. Years later, when heirs or collectors unearthed these machines, they discovered time capsules that told stories of how people once valued comfort above all. Finding one became a treasure hunt, with enthusiasts trading tips about forgotten examples hidden away like sleeping relics. Context Digest. The rise of the internet in the late 1990s and early 2000s gave Citroën fans a new lifeline. Forums and early websites connected isolated owners from France, Britain, Scandinavia, and beyond, creating a global knowledge base that helped keep the complex hydraulic systems alive. This digital camaraderie made the Prestige more attainable for determined enthusiasts, even if professional service networks had largely moved on. Micro story. American car fans stationed overseas often encountered the CX Prestige during tours in Europe. Many returned home with vivid memories of riding in one, sparking a fascination that simmered for decades. When the import doors opened thanks to the 25-year exemption, some of those very enthusiasts were among the first to bring Prestiges stateside, proudly showing them at European car meets and French-themed rallies across the US. Reflection bridge. What was once nearly unobtainable, now became a symbol of dedication, a prize earned not through wealth alone, but through persistence and vision. Micro story. For collectors in California or New York, importing a Prestige wasn't about owning the fastest car or the flashiest badge. It was about arriving at a gathering and instantly standing apart from a sea of German sedans and American classics. The sheer rarity of the CX, combined with its unmistakable silhouette, guaranteed attention, but the real reward was in the ride itself, which remained unmatched decades after its debut. Context Digest. Market values for the Prestige fluctuated wildly. In Europe, neglected examples could still be found cheaply in the 2000s, but fully preserved or restored cars began commanding serious premiums by the 2010s. This divergence made the Prestige simultaneously accessible and exclusive, depending on how much risk an owner was willing to take with maintenance. Micro story. Owners in the US developed a reputation for evangelism. They would offer rides to curious enthusiasts at car shows, eager to share the sensation of floating over potholes and speed bumps. The car's ability to deliver, a magic carpet feel on American roads, where infrastructure often punishes stiff suspensions, turned skeptics into believers almost instantly. Reflection bridge. Slowly but surely, the Prestige was rewriting its own reputation from fragile oddity to irreplaceable experience. Micro story. In Japan, where appreciation for eccentric European cars runs deep, a small but passionate following of CX Prestige owners emerged. Japanese collectors meticulously maintained their cars, sometimes better than in Europe itself, and exported knowledge back into the global community. This cross-pollination of expertise ensured survival, showing that the Prestige's influence had become borderless. Context Digest. Today, the Prestige exists in a delicate balance. Its complexity and rarity keep it out of the mainstream, but those very qualities give it magnetic appeal. Owners share a bond of resilience and pride, knowing they preserve. A philosophy that the automotive industry has largely abandoned in its pursuit of standardization. Micro story. When a Prestige rolls into a modern cars and coffee event in the United States, the reactions are immediate. People stop, puzzled at the long flowing lines, the unusual proportions, the dashboard that looks more spaceship than sedan. It sparks conversations about design, about comfort, about why cars no longer feel so daring. Every sighting is an education moment, a chance for the CX to recruit new admirers decades after its birth. Context digest. The endurance of the Prestige's legend shows that cars don't need to dominate sales charts to shape culture. Sometimes, all it takes is an uncompromising vision that lingers in memory and resurfaces when enthusiasts seek alternatives to conformity. The Prestige's journey from French state limousine to American cult import embodies this truth. Microstory. Even now, restoration shops in Europe occasionally unearth long-stored examples, returning them to life with painstaking work. The moment a freshly revived Prestige takes to the road, spectators are reminded that comfort, imagination, and individuality are timeless values, not relics of the past. As the Citroën CX Prestige settles into its role as a cherished classic, its story invites us to reflect on what luxury truly means, and why sometimes the most daring machines end up defining eras not by numbers, but by the emotions they leave behind. So here we are, automotive enthusiasts, having journeyed through the rise, the struggle, and the reinvention of the Citroën CX Prestige. It's time to draw the threads together. This car, born in the turbulence of the 1970s, stretched into a limousine in defiance of convention, served as a rolling symbol of French pride, and then faded into obscurity only to re-emerge as a cult treasure for a new generation. It teaches us that innovation does not always follow the path of commercial success, but it can carve out a legacy that grows stronger with time. The Prestige's story is not about dominance in sales or technical superiority on paper, but about a philosophy that dared to place comfort, imagination, and individuality above conformity and predictability. For American enthusiasts today, the car's relevance is striking. The import window has made it attainable, prices remain within reach compared to mainstream classics, and the mod scene offers creative ways to keep it alive without betraying its essence. It reminds us that in a world where so many cars look and feel the same, there is still space for machines that carry a sense of otherworldliness. The Prestige rewards those willing to embrace quirks, who value an emotional connection over statistics and who see driving not just as movement but as an experience. Reflecting on its journey, we see how the Prestige embodies a wider truth about car culture itself. That even when the market moves on, enthusiasts will find, preserve, and elevate the machines that speak to them, ensuring that no truly daring idea ever disappears completely. And so, whether you're a collector searching for your next project, a dreamer imagining what it would be like to glide through your city on a cushion of hydraulics, or simply a fan of automotive history who enjoys discovering forgotten chapters, the Citroën CX Prestige offers something rare. A reminder that the most memorable cars are often the ones that refuse to fit into neat categories. Thank you for spending this time with Overdrive Insider, where we celebrate machines, culture, and the stories that move us. Until next time, drive with curiosity. Think about the roads less traveled, and keep the spirit of adventure alive. Farewell for now, automotive enthusiasts.